Rainbow currency, how to participate in initial coin offerings. Perhaps by this point you've heard of the rainbow currency and cryptocurrencies, but maybe you're confused. Maybe you have a lot of questions. Maybe you desire information on how can you participate in initial coin offerings, particularly involving the rainbow currency. Well, I've got information for you, so hold on, and it's time to learn and have fun getting this information. Of course, at this juncture, time is of the essence in the sense that the rainbow currency is currently amid during the process of its initial coin offering. So if you see this video shortly after it's published online, that means that the rainbow currency is currently in the ICO, the initial coin offering phase. If you've seen this video, or if you watch it after the ICO, you can still look at this video to learn all about how you can participate in initial coin offerings. Well, at this early juncture in this video, I'd like to stress, I cannot particularly stress enough, that when you participate and get the rainbow currency, cryptocurrency for yourself, never consider that as an investment. Instead, it's something else even more valuable in my mind. Indeed, not an investment at all from my perspective. When you participate and get your own rainbow currency, you should consider it as your everyday money. That's right, your everyday money. I usually state the following at the end of most of my videos, but we're going to do it right here early on because this presentation is going to be quite long, quite informative, and I encourage you to watch this entire video so you can get the important information on how you can participate in initial coin offerings. But if you don't have time to watch the whole video, be sure at any time to click my affiliate link below so you can get onto the official website of my official affiliate link to the rainbow currency so you can check it out for yourself and participate. Get your own rainbow currency, which I encourage you to do. Also, at any time during this presentation, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel so that you can get more of my reports on the rainbow currency and other companies and projects and developments within the Safe Zone galaxy of stars. Well, now it's time to get straight to my educational presentation, which I strongly encourage you to watch in full because this is great. It's information that I believe that you need to know, particularly if you're getting involved in cryptocurrency for the first time, even if that happens to be, which I recommend, the rainbow currency. So now here we go. Right off the bat, I'd like to point out something that's fun and interesting, that under the United States Federal Code 17 USC 107, la-di-da, all this legal mumbo jumbo, but what it means basically is under the Fair Use Act within the United States, accepted by international law, I'm able to show you educational videos that are posted elsewhere on YouTube right away, fully and wholly, so that you can learn. This is a way for people and educators such as myself to share valuable information that's found elsewhere on the internet and also on YouTube. With all this in mind, right away I'd like to sincerely and genuinely thank the gentleman that you see right here on your screen right now. He is about to give you his presentation, which I am accepting and posting right here under the Fair Use Act so you can learn. His YouTube channel is called Hacking the System, and this gentleman is going to teach you a lot about how you can participate with initial coin offerings, what it's all about, and his take on the whole situation. Once again, before he starts instructing us, teaching us this valuable information, I'd like to re-stress again that when you participate in the rainbow currency, never consider this an investment with the rainbow currency. Instead, you should view this participation in the rainbow currency as getting your everyday money. And now, here we go. Pay close attention. He's got his own perspective, and I think it's important for you to learn. So here we go.
Your boy, the Made Man, also known as Ian Bellina. Welcome to Hacking the System, the show where I teach you how to make six figures in your 20s by any means necessary. And this week, I had the pleasure of attending Token Summit in New York City 2017, the world's first conference purely dedicated to initial coin offerings, also known as ICOs. What are ICOs and how are they disrupting and hacking venture capital? In today's show, I'll cover this and how ICOs are creating millionaires in 2 to 3 years. I had the pleasure at this conference of meeting tons and tons of crypto millionaires, guys who made their millions on Ethereum. I met like 5 guys in one meetup who made millions off of Ethereum. One guy made millions off of MadeSafe. Right? So ICOs, baby, are the new gold rush. In today's show, I'll break down how you guys can leverage ICOs to make your first million. Let's get into it. Hey, what up, world? This is your boy, the Made Man. Welcome to Hacking the System, the show where I teach you how to make six figures by any means necessary while you're still young. Create the lifestyle of your dreams and hustle to greatness. So right now, we're living in the biggest gold rush of human history. Let me say that again. Right now, we're living in the biggest gold rush in human history. The biggest wealth transfer in human history is happening right now, right before our eyes, in the background, and very few people know it even exists, right? The biggest amount of wealth is being transferred right now. We're in a golden era. What era is that? It's the ICO era, the initial coin offering era, the blockchain era, right? Go back to the dot-com boom, right? In the early 90s, early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, companies like Google, Amazon, eBay, right? All these different companies, right? Almost anybody could just start a dot-com company and make millions, right? Because there was a big bubble blowing up, right? Anybody who had an idea, any idea, right? Recall pets.com, right? Anybody who had an idea was making millions and billions during this bubble. But guess what, right? The bubble eventually popped. But although that bubble popped, it still made lots and lots of people rich, right? Because they were in early, right? They were early to the party. The people who came late to the party missed out, right? So for example, all the founders of those companies became billionaires in less than 5 years, right? eBay, Google, right? You have your Yahoo, all these different companies back then. But not only the founders, even the employees, the early employees of Google, eBay, Amazon became millionaires during that dot-com era, right? That was the most recent gold rush we had. But guess what? Right now we have a new dot-com era. And no, it's not dot-com. It's something called blockchain. Blockchain is the most disruptive innovation in technology since the internet itself. Just think about that for a second, right? How disruptive has the internet been in human history, world history, right? People all over the world have access to information. People in oppressed countries and nations have access to information because of the internet. People can learn from Wikipedia for free, right? Khan Academy, YouTube, Google. Access to all this information in the world is available to anybody, right? Information is no longer tied to just the rich people, right? The internet has disrupted technology. But guess what? Now we have to set our sights on the future. Where is the future going? What's the next disruptive technology? Lots of people think, including myself, that next disruptive technology is blockchain. blockchain is a technology that came about from the creation of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, right? And I'm not going to delve deep into that video because I've already done videos based on that topic of blockchain and Bitcoin. But in this particular topic of ICOs and initial coin offerings, this disruptive technology is the new gold rush. All right, so I've been talking a lot about ICOs. I've been hyping it up, right? As you can see, I'm on the ICO hype team from Token Summit. But what exactly are ICOs? Initial coin offerings, also called ICOs for short, or ICOs, some people call them that, right? But I call them ICOs, are basically getting the best of what are known as IPOs in the business world on Wall Street, initial public offerings. When a company goes public and lists their shares available to the general public, they get the best of that world and also take the best of crowd offerings from sites like Kickstarter, GoFundMe, and AngelList for businesses, and they combine them to create a Super Saiyan type creation, right? Like basically going Super Saiyan 4 or something, right? They basically get the best of both worlds, they fuse them together to create this disruptive innovation called initial coin offerings. Right, so to kind of backstep, an ICO is when a blockchain company, right? It has to be a blockchain because that's where it comes from. A blockchain company has an idea, right? So it's a business, a project. They have an idea of building something on a blockchain product, which is typically an application, right? So examples could be Bitcoin, Ethereum, Stratus, which is blown up, by the way, if you guys don't know. Right, so they have an idea that they want to build, but as opposed to going and getting and raising capital like typical businesses do from venture capital, angel investors, and private investors, they raise capital from the general public. So similar to a crowdfund like a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe campaign. But the difference is that this is a specifically blockchain company or product that they're building, and in exchange, as opposed to giving you equity in their project or their company like they do with typical venture capital or angel investors, they give you tokens or cryptocurrencies in exchange for your money, right? So as opposed to just purely giving them money in your typical crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter, right, and expecting a product, the investors, and when it comes to ICOs, don't care about a product. They just want to get that token. They're about that token life, man, right? So they want the cryptocurrencies. They take those currencies, and the reason they invest and give them money, which is usually done in Bitcoin or Ether, which is the currency for the Ethereum platform, right? So in exchange of their Bitcoin or Ether currency, they get the currency for that particular project. So for example, if we use Stratus as an example, Stratus launched their ICO last year, right? And Stratus, which is basically their project was building a C# platform on top of the Bitcoin blockchain, right? So the idea was letting C# developers create applications on the Bitcoin blockchain without having to know C++, right? Because they're basically adding a abstraction layer, or kind of like an API, without getting too technical with it, kind of like an abstraction layer to make it easier for somebody to write applications in a different language and translate them to the Bitcoin platform, right? So that's keeping things as simple as possible. That's what they're doing, right? They're basically building a translator to let you program in a different language on Bitcoin blockchain. And that was the idea. They raised funding last year somewhere in the summertime, right? They raised their funds, and it was a very low ICO. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I believe they raised about $2 million. But anyway, right, they take that money. In exchange, they gave investors tokens called Stratus tokens, right? And investors purchase these tokens because they anticipate that if they believe in the project, or if they think other people believe in the project, they anticipate the value of those tokens they have to go up in value over time, right? So they're basically taking a chance, a risk, a gamble on this company, and they're betting the farm. Well, not really betting the farm, but they're taking their chances, expecting the value to rise. So once they have these tokens, first of all, they purchase these tokens at pennies on the dollar, right? They basically, since they're early investors, they get them at a discount, right? So for example, the Stratus ICO, you were able to purchase the Stratus tokens at less than 2 cents. I believe it was 0.017 cents per token. That was last year, right? It hasn't even been 1 year yet. It's not even summertime yet. And the price for one token of Stratus right now is $3.52 when I last checked. To show you how disruptive that is, right? If you had spent $5,000 during that ICO to scoop up as many Stratus tokens as you could, because you're like, man, you know what? Building this C# platform on the Bitcoin blockchain is going to change the world, man, right? Maybe you're a believer from day one, right? And you put in 5 G's on it, right? In less than 1 year, those 5 G's would be worth over $1 million. You'd be a millionaire, bruh. I mean, just think about that for a second, right? $5,000 to $1 million in less than 1 year. What other kind of investment can do that for you? Nothing really, right? So that being said, right? So to kind of backstep, right? ICOs, initial coin offerings, are when investors, regular people like me and you, the public, usually spend our money to purchase tokens from a company or a project that hasn't yet launched, or maybe they have a prototype. In exchange, they give us, in exchange for our money, which is Bitcoin or Ether usually, they give us their token for their project or their platform, and we hold on to them. And in about a week to a month or so, we can then take our tokens, and if we like, hold on to them, or if we don't like, sell them on an online exchange, similar to your investing sites like E-Trade, TD Ameritrade. There are other exchanges purely for cryptocurrencies like Bittrex, Poloniex, where we exchange them for Bitcoin or Ether, right? So basically, we can sell them off, or we can liquidate our investment, right? So this is how ICOs work at a very, very simple level. And now let's go into what IPOs are to truly understand where ICOs come from. All right, so what are IPOs, also known as initial public offerings, which is where ICOs kind of borrow some methods from, right? So IPOs are when a private company gets their private shares and makes them publicly available to the whole world. It's the first time listing themselves public to the world that, hey, we're open for business, you guys can purchase our shares, right? So for example, all companies on Wall Street, on those exchanges like NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, even exchanges in Japan, across the world, right? When they go public, that's what that concept means. Going public for a company is having an IPO, saying, hey, we want to raise more money. So as opposed to just raising money from the private industry, from private sector, we now can go and raise capital from the entire world, from anybody who's willing to give up their money in exchange for these shares, right? So companies like Google, Amazon, Tesla, Snapchat, which recently just had an IPO, right? All these companies now are available for purchase, right? So if you go on your online brokerage store or site, for example, E-Trade, Ameritrade, and you look up the symbol SNAP, S-N-A-P, you can purchase shares of Snapchat, right? So that's how IPOs work. Now, the issue with IPOs is that only rich people can play ball. I say that because although the general public now has access to purchase companies, we've missed the boat. We missed the golden rush. By the time we're purchasing a company on Wall Street after its IPO, post-IPO phase, right? The price of that stock has 10x, 50x, 100x in terms of this initial price, right? So if you're an early investor, pre-IPO, that's where the real money is made, because IPOs make billionaires overnight. Let me say that again. IPOs make billionaires overnight, right? If you want to know the cheat code to being a billionaire, start a company, go public, have an IPO. That's the secret, right? Game over, right? The thing is, though, it's hard to do, right? All the billionaires out there, they become billionaires by having IPOs. So companies like Facebook, with Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Microsoft, the Snapchat CEO, Evan Spiegel, just became a billionaire. I believe now he's worth like, what, 20 billion? All from an IPO. So now you're probably wondering, how do they become billionaires? They become billionaires by leveraging, right, IPOs. So if we take a step back, I think we have basically two phases: the pre-IPO phase, the post-IPO phase. Imagine an IPO as a party. The pre-IPO phase is when the party is bumping, right? Good vibe, good music, good drinks. Post-IPO phase is when the party is like the party is kind of dip, you know? This party is getting kind of whack. It's getting overcrowded. It's kind of musty and dusty in here, right? So imagine if we go on public sites like PitchBook, which shows us venture capital and angel investment rounds for companies, and if we look up the company Snap, which is for Snapchat, right? The price, right? So the price for purchasing one share of Snapchat during the Series A1 round was 1 cent per share. I did not mess up. Let me say that again, right? The price for purchasing one share of Snapchat was 1 cent per share. I mean, just blows the mind, right? And let's say you missed that boat, right? Because I believe that's usually for the angel investors, like that first check in, right? The first guy, because their Series A1 round, they had a valuation of about $500,000, right? Then let's say after that, there was a Series A round itself, and you could have purchased one share of Snapchat for 21 cents, right? 21 cents is still not bad, right? So if you've never done any kind of investments before and you don't understand what this means, right? This next part will show you how powerful IPOs are and the pre-IPO phase is, right? So after that, if Snapchat had multiple rounds of raising more capital, and with each further round of capital they raise, their valuation keeps on growing, right? So their initial valuation was about $500,000, then it went to about, I believe, like $5 million, then kept on going. Right, so after the pre-IPO phase, they now go public post-IPO. So now they've been in business because their first raised capital in 2012. Right now we're in 2017, so it's been 5 years. So after 5 years of hiring more employees, building a better product, right, they're obviously going to be a better company, making more money, right? So during their post-IPO phase, when they went on Wall Street and said, hey, you know what, we're ready for business. This party's kind of late for the private investors. They want to cash out. Right? Now your average mom, dad, Joe, Jane can purchase shares of Snapchat at the amazing price of $17 with a valuation of $24 billion. Right? Hold up, son, hold up, right? Wait a minute. You mean to tell me people are rushing to purchase Snapchat stock at a valuation of $24 billion with a price of $17? When the people who are early in Snapchat purchased those same shares of stock for only 1 cent or 21 cents? I mean, just think about that, right? If you're early, if you're just super duper early in Snapchat, right? Writing that first check, that second check, right? If you're part of that group, you could flip in 5 years, flip your stocks that you purchased for 1 cent or you purchased for 21 cents. You could flip them on Wall Street, on an exchange, right, for $17 during the IPO. Although I would say, though, during IPO phase, to kind of protect against dumping of shares like this, because, I mean, people are trying to cash out, right? So to kind of protect against this, early investors have to wait 6 months, I believe, until they actually dump their stock, right? There's a law saying you can't just dump all your stock and try to cash out, right? Because it's going to tank the stock, right? And it's going to hurt everybody else, the guys who are late to the party. Right, so the SEC has all these different regulations to protect against that. But still, I mean, like, so although you're early and the first to purchase after the post-IPO phase, you missed the real money-making opportunity, right? So imagine the founders, right? This is how founders become billionaires, right? CEOs, founders of all these companies. They basically, when they found a company, they print money, they print paper money and saying, okay, we have 10 million shares in the Snapchat or whatever at this valuation, right? Once we go public, we can sell the shares we got from just being the founders of the company for $17 per share, right? So multiply this to whatever price you have, right? This is how companies make money. Now, the investors make millions as well because they get in at about 21 cents or so, right? As you can see, these IPOs are totally unfair. They're unfair in the sense that you can't invest in the pre-IPO phase due to SEC regulations. That's the American Security and Exchange Commission. It's meant to protect your average investor, and they have regulations saying that to invest in the pre-IPO phase, you have to be what's known as a sophisticated or a accredited investor. What does that mean? That means you're super duper rich, basically, right? You have to show proof of making over 200 grand 2 years in a row, or have a net worth over $1 million. If you don't have that, you cannot invest, right? And also, because the typical way companies raise money in an IPO or prior to an IPO, when it's just a startup or a company, they want to have as few investors as possible, right? Because the more investors you have, the harder it is to manage and keep up with, right? And you're basically diluting the pot, right? So you want to have as much money as possible from as little people as possible, right? So rather than raising $100 million from 100 million people, you'd rather raise $100 million from just 10 people if you can, right? That's kind of how that works, right? So because of that concept, companies go to people who have lots and lots of money. So, right? So going back to that Series A1 phase, which is usually for angel investors, right? To be an angel investor typically requires you to invest minimum 25 grand in a company, right? So angel investors, on average, minimum usually invest $25,000. And then for venture capital, they typically like to write big checks, fat checks, right? So on average, they like to invest minimum $3 million or so, give or take, right? Because they're trying to make big moves. So imagine your average person who's like me, right? Me, you, whoever, right? Who wants to invest in the next Snapchat, the next Facebook, the next Google, when it's just a bunch of college kids in the lab trying to create the next big disruptive idea? We can't do that because we can't play ball. We don't have 25 grand to invest, right? So this is where ICOs disrupt everything in the sense that you don't have to have 25 grand to invest early in that pre-IPO phase. You can just come with your 10 bucks, your 100 bucks, your 1 grand, your 5 grand, whatever you got. Everybody can play. Everybody can invest and come up and make their million, right? This is how ICOs are disrupting IPOs. All right, what is crowdfunding? I talked about IPOs, initial public offerings, and how ICOs brought the good parts of that in coming up with this concept of ICOs, but they also borrow something from the crowdfunding world, right? And they've merged the two to create what are known as ICOs. So to understand that, we have to also discuss crowdfunding. Crowdfunding, some of you may be familiar with this, is when people, project or company raise money from the general public, right? So sites like Kickstarter, GoFundMe, AngelList, all these sites, people can go on there and say, hey, you know what? My car is broken down. I need to raise some money. Can you help me fix my car? Or, hey, I'm trying to travel to go see my sick aunt and blah, blah, blah. Can you guys donate some money to me, or donate money to my project? Or maybe I'm trying to build this nice thing on Kickstarter or fund a film, right? Can you invest this, right? So people basically have something they would like to raise money for, and they leverage social media and the online web to spread this message and raise money for this, right? So once you raise money for this, right? So, but to kind of go back, let me first take a step back. So crowdfunding was enabled in 2012 when Obama passed the Jobs Act, which basically said that, okay, we know what, typically only sophisticated investors or accredited investors can invest in companies prior to them being public. But now we're going to open it up to the general public and say, okay, you don't have to be an angel investor and invest a minimum of 25 grand or have over $1 million net worth or make over 200 grand in 2 years in a row to invest in a company. Now anybody can come and invest in this company or project, right? So this made sites like Kickstarter available, AngelList, which is for startups to raise money from everybody. However, although that was good and kind of opened up the space, right? There are still regulations and stipulations as to how much you could raise. I believe there was a cap in terms of each individual could only invest 100 grand if they weren't a sophisticated investor, right? So there's still laws tying the people down, right? So although it was a good concept, there are still restrictions, right? So ICOs, initial coin offerings, took the concept of raising money from the general public, kind of like Kickstarter, AngelList, and take the concept of IPOs in terms of people getting back as opposed to a product, they're getting back shares, right? And they merge the two to create something that's totally disruptive. And let's get into the next part and talk about how disruptive this is. All right, so we talked about how ICOs take the best of both worlds from crowdfunding and IPOs and make this Super Saiyan 4 type fusion, amazing disruptive innovation. But how are they actually hacking venture capital? Right? Because venture capital used to only belong to the rich people. As I mentioned before, only the rich people could invest in Google, Amazon, Tesla, Snapchat, pennies on the dollar in that early pre-IPO phase. Right? Everybody else post-IPO was getting a bad deal. Well, now companies, right? So going back to Stratis example, companies, as opposed to only raising money from venture capital or angel investors, right? VCs on average invest minimum $3 million, and angel investors who are basically just super rich people, individuals, on average invest a minimum 25 grand, right? Now they, in the same manner as a crowdfunding campaign, they go to the entire World Wide Web. Anybody in the world, no matter your location, just think about that, no matter your location, the company, like for example, Stratis is based in London, but me over here in Washington, D.C., I can still put my money in without even having to fly there, right? So they open up to the entire world. Anybody can invest money into this blockchain company, right? Because ICOs are for blockchain companies or projects or ideas. And the premise is that as an investor, as opposed to receiving equity in the company, we receive tokens that we can then flip and sell at a higher value, ideally down the line, right? But it's a value for companies especially, right? Because now, so picture Shark Tank, right? The hit TV show Shark Tank with Mark Cuban, Mr. Wonderful, Draymond John, right? All those different people, right? How many times do you see people come on to Shark Tank and say, okay, you know what? The investor is going to give you $250,000 in exchange for 10% of your company, right? So with typical venture capital or angel investments, right? Because Shark Tank guys are basically angel investors, right? People with over $1 million net worth. They basically invest in exchange for equity. The company getting money has to give up something. They have to give up ownership of their company, right? Which is a bad thing, right? Because let's say you own 100% of your company. Each time you raise money, you're giving away a slice of the pie. Now companies are sprinting towards ICOs because ICOs allow them to raise capital, right? So imagine, going back to that Shark Tank example, that same company can raise that $250,000 and give up 0% ownership of their company. Zero, a big fat goose egg, right? So imagine the value that is and how disruptive that is for companies, to a point that in the last 1 year alone, blockchain companies have raised more than 2.4 times money from ICOs than from venture capital and regular investments, right? And companies are raising millions of dollars, millions, right? Ethereum ICO raised $18 million. Recently, there was the MobileGo ICO. Recently, just closed up last week. There is $55 million, right? The Gnosis IPO was humongous, right? The biggest IPO. I mean, not IPO. The biggest ICO, excuse me, right? Kind of mixing up the words. The biggest ICO raised was the DAO raised, I believe, $160 million. So there's a ton of money in this space. So that being said, right? The fact that companies don't have to give up equity in their company to raise money, that disrupts VCs, venture capital, angel investments right off the bat. That's the first way it's disrupting venture capital. The second way it's disrupting venture capital is that there's very little regulation or laws in this space when it comes to ICOs, meaning that it's the wild, wild west in a good way though, right? In the sense that there's no red tape, blue tape, or there's different government agencies saying, hey, you can't do that, you can't do this, right? So imagine a typical IPO, the initial public offering for on Wall Street. The SEC Commission has so many different amounts of paperwork you have to file. I believe like just filing for it is like over 600 pages of paperwork. With an ICO, There's barely any paper. There really isn't paperwork. You just say, okay, you know what? It's kind of like firing up a Kickstarter page, saying, okay, hey, you know what? We're gonna raise this amount of money. Here's where you guys can put the money in. We'll give you the tokens, right? So there's less paperwork. Now, I'm not gonna say there's zero paperwork, but it's much easier and faster for a company to raise money with an ICO than go through all these different regulations, stipulations with an IPO and getting private capital, right? And the third way ICOs are disrupting, breaking down the wall, the barrier of venture capital and angel investing is liquidity. That's probably that takes the cake in terms of what exactly is disrupting, right? So just picture this, right? I mentioned earlier how Snapchat, the first check by the first investors was in 2012. Snapchat finally had their IPO in 2017. That's a full 5 years. So if you were the first investor in Snapchat, wrote that first check at a discount, right? Pennies on the dollar, 1 cent, 21 cents, what have you, right? You would have to wait 5 years to realize your gains. Meaning that you would have to wait 5 years to have the ability to cash out, to sell those shares you bought, you purchased, right? So you have to wait for 5 years. I don't know about you guys, but I don't have 5 years to wait, bruh. Like, you know, like, hey, trying to make this ends ASAP, right? So now ICOs are disruptive in the sense that they have almost instant liquidity. In the sense that as soon as you purchase, as soon as you, for example, with Stratis, right? As soon as you give them your money, which is in the form of Ether or Bitcoin, within about 1 week to 1 month, those tokens are now available to be listed on an online exchange like Bittrex or Poloniex, right? So you don't have to wait 5 years to cash out, right? So imagine like those early investors in Uber, right? Like Jason Calacanis, Gary Vaynerchuk, all these investors in Uber, they're still waiting for Uber to go public or for somebody to purchase them or buy them up before they can pull out their money and realize the gains and take out those profits they've made. I mean, sure, they're gonna make a ton of money on those investments, but they have to wait on average 2 to 7 years. But with an ICO, you only have to wait on average a week to a month or so, right? So for example, I've invested in multiple ICOs, and initially, I mean, so I began investing with small amounts, just kind of test out the waters. Only $100, right? I put $100 on the Humanic ICO, which is a project basically that's trying to help the unbanked population across the world with banking. Right? It's a great, stable idea, disruptive idea, great company, right? But I just to test the water, I just put $100 on it, and within a month, I've gotten over a 300% return on my money, right? And I can cash out right now. I don't have to wait 2 years, 5 years, 7 years. I can cash out in a month. Now, so the guys out there that all they do is just flip ICOs. They put in 5 G's, a month later it's 10 G's. They repeat, right? Just like they're straight cheesing the system, cheesing the game, hacking the system, right? But that goes to show you that ICOs are so liquid, so liquid compared to regular old venture capital, angel investments, right? That now even venture capitalists are investing in ICOs. I'm just thinking about that for a second, right? Over at Token Summit, where I just came from, right? I met a whole bunch of hedge funds, like people who made their millions, made their M's in cryptos, and now they run hedge funds where they invest in ICOs. You know, I went to a meetup, met 3 hedge fund guys. They all made their millions investing in the Ethereum ICO. Right? I'll talk about that later in the next section. But right, all these people are putting big money in these ICOs because they're liquid. You can invest in them and a month later pull out your money if you don't believe in the project anymore, or if you just want to make a quick profit. Or you can hold like regular venture capitalists and just ride the wave till the project matures. But you have options, and it pays to have options. All right, I've been hyping up ICOs a lot, but what is the history, right? Just to kind of give you guys an idea of where this idea concept came from. The very first ICO was launched by Mastercoin, I believe. I think they're the first ones to truly do this on a big scale, right? So Mastercoin was like, hey, you know what? We're trying to raise money. but let's just raise money from the general public in the same way as crowdfunding campaigns do it. But in exchange, as opposed to giving them a product, we'll give them tokens. We'll give them our cryptocurrency. And people loved it, man. They loved this idea. They raised so much money. They raised $5 million from this crowd sale, and people loved it, right? That was the very, very, very first ICO. Then moving forward, we've had lots and lots of big ICOs. We had the Ethereum ICO, where I met lots of millionaires at Token Summit that made their millions on the Ethereum ICO. So people were able to invest in the Ethereum ICO. They raised, I believe, $18 million. And the price for Ethereum token at that point was 30 cents. I don't know if you checked the price of Ethereum right now, but at the time of this video, it's about $160. So that's a big return on your money in less than 3 years. Less than 3 years, man. Like life-changing profits, as Ty Zen and LeonFu.com say, right? And then the DAO, as I mentioned earlier, was the biggest ICO we had, and they raised over $160 million. Right? And now it's come to a point where the industry and the space is so mature, we have ICOs almost every single week. So there are different calendars. You can go out there and find different ICOs to invest in, but this space, this is just the beginning. The best is yet to come. All right, so now we go to the meat of the video, right? The creme de la creme, the part you guys have been waiting for. So how can ICOs make you a millionaire in less than 5 years, right? In like 1, 2, or 3 years, right? I've kind of talked about this in different parts of the video building up to this, but right? This basically just showcases with 2 examples, right? So the Ethereum ICO. Ethereum is the second biggest competitor, is the second biggest cryptocurrency out there after Bitcoin, right? Has a market cap of, last time I checked, I believe like $16 billion. But you could have invested in their ICO in 2014 at a market cap or valuation of only $18 million, because that's how much money they raised. Well, not really, but yeah, so you could, anyway, who cares, right? You could basically have bought Ether, which is the currency they raised, right? They were giving out in exchange for Bitcoin. You could have given them Bitcoin at a price of 30 cents per Ether, right? So for 30 cents, so imagine you put in 2 grand, 2 G's, $2,000 in Ether in 2014. $2,000. Right now in 2017, in less than 3 years, those $2,000 you have would be worth over $1 million. Just think about that for a second, right? $2,000 in less than 3 years, you're a millionaire. I mean, like, that's disruption right there. Now, this is how millionaires are being made overnight. So when I was at Token Summit conference, the world's first cryptocurrency conference, right? I was meeting a whole bunch of people that made their millions on Ethereum ICO, man. Like, it was so inspirational, so moving. I'm like, yo, man, I need to bet the farm on this. Right, then the other example is Stratis. Stratis is like probably within the last year one of the biggest cryptos out there, right? So I mentioned earlier, right? You could have purchased the Stratis token during the ICO last year, in the summer of last year, 2016, for less than 2 cents. It was 0.017 cents, I believe, right? And right now, that Stratis is trading at $3.52 last time I checked. So that means if you put $5,000 into Stratis during the ICO, you'd be a millionaire in less than 1 year. I mean, like, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know any other kind of investment right now where people can make this amount of money so quickly. Not real estate, not investing in Wall Street, stocks, whatever, mutual funds, 401ks, hell no, man. Like, nothing is this disruptive. This is why I mentioned earlier in the video, this is the biggest transfer of wealth we've ever seen in human history. In human history. I mean, the last thing you want to be is be that dude, be that girl that missed this boat because you're just there hemming and hawing, hesitating, right? Like, fortune favors the bold, right? This is why I'm going all in cryptos, ICOs, right? I'm not putting in 2 G's or 5 G's just yet, but right, I'm kind of taking steps, right? So with me, I'm basically starting in small, right? I first began I was investing about $100 in each ICO, and I was doing about 2 or 3 ICOs a week, right? Then after, now that was like my first month, just kind of see how the entire process worked, learn how to send money to a project, learn how to get the money back, store the money, and flip it on the exchange, right? So far, I haven't really flipped any ICOs. I'm just kind of holding onto them for the long term, right? Then after a month or so, I raised the amount I was investing to $500 per ICO, right? Then a month later, I'm going to start doing one grand per ICO, right? Because I basically allocate a particular amount of my crypto portfolio to ICOs, right? So after a while, after you start making money on your portfolio, you can start putting money into different ICOs, right? But the idea is that if you get in early, you're basically like purchasing Snapchat pre-IPO. You're basically purchasing them at 1 cent, 21 cents, and flipping it and selling it, as opposed to I'm selling it for like 17 cents post-IPO. I mean, $17 post-IPO, right? So going back to Stratis, right? Less than 2 cents, $3.50 in less than 1 year. Ethereum, 30 cents, flipping that for 160, right? So people are making millions out here, man. Like, this is the fastest way I know to make $1 million. If you know any other faster ways, definitely put me on, plug me in, drop me a comment, let me know. But this right here is the game, it's the truth. All right, so I've been hyping up ICOs a lot, but now we go to the next part of it. Is it safe to invest in ICOs, initial coin offerings? Right, so back in the day, in the early phases, it wasn't as safe as it is now. Right now, it's definitely a lot more safe, but in the early days, it was kind of a wild west, right? It has the same problems you may have with your typical crowdfunding projects, right? So maybe your Kickstarter, your GoFundMe, whatever, where you give people the money, but you may not be sure if they actually follow through with what they say they're going to do, right? But so imagine you're giving somebody $100, $2 grand, $5 grand, and the project, they never actually start the project. They run off with the money, they scam you, or maybe the project just completely fails and bombs. In the early days, that was more likely. Nowadays, it's less likely, because now the community as a whole, the crypto community, has started to create different guidelines for what they desire in an ICO before they invest. So for example, now it's harder for someone to just run off with the money, in the sense that most people want, including myself, I recommend don't invest in companies unless they have an escrow account set up, an escrow wallet, meaning that if they raise $18 million, $30 million, $2 million, who cares, right? That money is locked up. They can't just, it's owned by a third party, right? An escrow company owns the wallet and says, okay, you guys can't take out money until you meet these particular goals of each milestone, right? So for example, Golem is a company that has different milestones coming up, right? They have one coming up next month, Golem Brass, right? So when the companies, they're more likely to raise money from the general public, investors like me and you who's probably watching. If they say, okay, you guys may raise $10 million, but you only get $2 million after completion of every single milestone, right? So you do milestone 1, you have $2 million for the first milestone, you finish that up, you can take this other $2 million you raised, you finish that up, you can take the next $2 million, $3 million, right? So this creates safety in the community and gives people that confidence before they back an idea, right? And the other things to avoid for when investing in ICOs, don't invest in teams that have anonymous developers, right? Like if you go on there and you don't know who's behind the team, they have no LinkedIn page, no picture, or if they have the picture, it's a generic picture, it's a stock picture, or even worse, it's a stolen picture of somebody else, it's not them, right? Like, so you gotta do your due diligence. You can't just invest blindly in this, right? Do your homework, right? Because there's lots of money to be made, so some people will go the extra mile to scam people, right? So make sure you do your homework, do your due diligence. If you know who the founders are on the website, check them out on LinkedIn, see if their background is credible, right? Search them on Google, see if there's any bad press on them, right? So for example, there was an ICO I was thinking of investing in, Monaco, right? Because they're doing kind of like they're creating debit cards and credit cards for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And I Googled the founder, and I saw on Google that his last company went bankrupt, and I'm like, oh, hold on, time out. I'm not giving these guys my money, right? So you want to do your homework like that. Or for example, go on sites like Bitcoin forums, right? Bitcoin Talk, I believe is one. Just search and see what other people are saying about these companies, right? So that same company, other people on the same Bitcoin forums were saying, hey, this is a possible scam, right? So things like that, you want to avoid them, right? But let's say you still believe in the project or the idea, right? So for example, with me, I still kind of like the idea. So as opposed to investing in the ICO, I'll pass on the ICO. But as soon as that project, as soon as the token gets listed on an exchange, I'll buy it early at a discount and just write it off, right, as the price goes up. Because ICOs are tricky, right? So, but once a project gets onto an exchange, you can still purchase it at a very, very cheap price and just write it off. So for example, some ICOs, although they're disrupting venture capital, there's still some restrictions, right? So for example, some ICOs, you can't invest in them if you're from America because we still have some SEC rules blocking some stuff, right? So there's some ICOs I couldn't invest in, like I believe it was iExec and RLC, some cloud computing stuff. I mean, some supercomputing stuff on a blockchain. So I couldn't invest in it because I was in America, right? So although now I learned I could just use a VPN, virtual private network, to access it, but still, right? You can just wait for the ICO to finish up. Once it got listed on the exchange, I just purchased their tokens for I purchased it for 35 cents, rode the wave till it was like 75 cents and sold, right? So for about 70 cents. So I basically doubled my money in like a week or two, right? But so those are different ways you can navigate ICOs. One other thing to avoid when investing in ICOs, make sure the company or project you're investing in has some kind of prototype. Now, I know Ethereum, when they initially launched, they had no prototype. They had like pretty much just a white paper, basically just a business plan, basically, right? But that was super duper early. Now the space is more competitive, right? So expect the company to have a prototype, a proof of concept, minimum viable product, MVP, right? Have some kind of working prototype prior to you investing money in them, right? Because you're taking a chance in this, right? And now there are sites out there that actually share their due diligence with others for free. So for example, one site I just found out recently and I love is called ICOrating.com. They go there and they basically do in-depth, thorough reviews of each ICO before you invest in it, and it's free, right? They'll tell you this ICO is risky, don't invest in this, pass on this, or this is a great ICO, it's stable, right? They go through the team, the idea, the product, right? The competition, right? Very, very thorough, and it's publicly available, right? So ICOrating.com. All right, so I got you hyped, super hyped. You're trying to make your $1 million quick in like 1 year, 2 years, maybe 3 years at the worst, right? So how do you get involved in this, right? So let me show you how you invest in ICOs. So there are different ICO calendars online, different websites that have different dates when each ICO is occurring, right? So ones that I mentioned earlier, ICOrating.com. I also like ICOalert.com, I believe is the name of that, right? So just go on Google, type in ICO alert, ICO calendars. I also like the calendar by Smith & Crown. They also have some reports on occasion for some ICOs, right? But basically just watch these calendars like a hawk, right? And every single month, every single week, I go through and find out what projects I like. I circle them on my calendar and say, okay, you know what? Let me line up $500, 1G, maybe down the line 2Gs, 5Gs for this ICO, right? So just kind of make a note of whatever ICOs you want to invest in. Go on the website, do your homework, do your research, due diligence, right? Then get your money ready. Then once they launch, because they basically have launch dates, right? So let's say there'll be an ICO launching tomorrow, right? And it's a big ICO, right? So they'll give you the date and the time. They'll be open for investing. So once it opens for investment, let's say they're launching at noon, 12 p.m. Eastern time. So at 12 p.m. Eastern time, you go on the website, type it in, and on their website, they'll have their wallet where you send the money, and they have instructions of how to invest in them, right? So for example, let's say it's an Ethereum application they're being built on the Ethereum platform. They typically would take Ether. For the most part, most projects take Bitcoin or Ether. Some take some other different currencies, right? So you always have Bitcoin and Ether in your portfolio ready for ICOs, right? So once the data is listed, once it's open, then you have to send them money. So one thing to note though is some ICOs are capped, meaning that they close off after they raise a particular amount of money. So for example, let's say, I know that there was a storage ICO I was a part of recently. Their goal was to raise $30 million. So after 30 million, if you're late to that party, you're out, right? So, and some ICOs sell out like that, right? Some ICOs have sold out in like 30 minutes, right? I think the storage ICO was about lasted about 2 or 3 days, I believe, right? And some ICOs have no cap, and they last an entire month, right? So all these different things are available on these different websites on their calendars, right? So if an ICO is capped, that means you have to be super early, ready to press the button to send your money there, right? Whether you're Bitcoin or you're Ether. Now, once you send the money, sometimes there are basically 2 ways the projects will send you their tokens. Sometimes it's instant, especially if it's being done with my Ethereum. With Ether. If it's a ERC20 token, which is kind of like this standardized token for Ethereum platform applications, meaning that it's very, very easy for them to send you their tokens right back to you, right? So from your wallet, from your Bitcoin or Ethereum wallet, if you're new to Bitcoin or Ethereum, I have an earlier video that covers that, and just go on YouTube or just search in Google how to use a Bitcoin and Ethereum wallet. But one thing to note, make sure when you're sending money, when you're sending your Bitcoin or your Ethereum to these ICOs, don't send them money from an online exchange. I repeat, don't send them money from an online exchange like Poloniex, GDAX, Coinbase, Gemini, Bittrex, Bitfinex, right? Because all these websites, you don't own the private keys. And if you have to claim your tokens down the line, sometimes they'll require you to have to sign and verify that it was you that sent the tokens. So it's not somebody who's trying to pose as you to steal your tokens. And to sign and verify, you'll have to have your own private keys. You have to have access to the private keys, right? So what I recommend for Ethereum ICOs is my Ether wallet, which is just myetherwallet.com, I believe, right? And then for Bitcoin, well, it kind of depends, right? Sometimes you can just use a regular wallet like Exodus or Jax, or you can just use one like blockchain.info. I've used that one before because I had issues with the Exodus, with not being able to verify, so I had to export my private keys. So just to kind of give you guys a warning in advance, sometimes it can get very, very technical, especially if you're a beginner, if you're a newbie at this, right? So to kind of avoid all that headache, invest in ICOs with your own wallet, not an exchange wallet like Coinbase or Poloniex or what have you, right? I recommend my Ether wallet for anything Ethereum because that one always works, right? And Bitcoin, I would recommend blockchain.info or Exodus. Or even better, if you have a hardware wallet, that works even better, right? But not everybody has a hardware wallet, right? So with that being said though, right? Once you send the money, right? Usually, sometimes it could be within a few days, right? But as I mentioned earlier, it can be anywhere between 1 week to a month to where they'll give you back the tokens, right? So you basically, because once they close funding, once they close raising money, after a few days, then they'll give you the tokens, right? So some campaigns, they close very, very early, within a day, within 2 days. Some campaigns, it takes them 1 month to raise money, right? Because sometimes they aren't capped, but the ones that are capped, usually, and they're popular and there's lots of demand, they typically close early, right? So anyway, once they give you the tokens, you can store them either in your wallet, if it's ERC20 token, if it's Ethereum token, you can store it in the My Ether wallet, or if it's whatever different token, you store it in that project's wallet. So for example, Stratus has a Stratus wallet you can download from the website, right? So whatever the website is, sometimes if they have their own wallets they use, right? And you can hold the tokens there. But anyway, once you have the tokens, you basically just hold on to them and just wait until that token becomes available for trading, for buying and selling on an online exchange like Poloniex or Bittrex and some others, right? So this could be a week, it could be 2 days, it could be a month, maybe even longer sometimes, but that's rare, right? But it's a lot more liquid than waiting 5 years for Snapchat to go public or Uber to go public, right? So, like for me, on average, usually it's been. So I've had some go public on exchanges within 2 days to a week, right? Some, yeah, I would say within 2 days to a week. Some maybe longer, maybe 2 weeks, but it's very, very quick, very, very liquid, right? And the way I treat ICOs is I just buy and hold, just buy and hold, just buy and hold, right? Because this is a long-term hold for me, long-term investment for me. So I'll just buy something, hold it, not gonna look at it for 2 years, right? If it pops early, I'll buy some more, right? So Humanink, I initially bought $100 in the ICO because I wasn't quite sure about it, but it was a good idea, but very, very lofty idea, you know, save the world, cure world hunger, unbanked, all this stuff, right? But once I realized I got a 3x return within like 2 weeks, I went back and put in 2 G's. Then 2 weeks later, I came back, put in 2 more G's. So now I have like $4,000 invested in a Humanink ICO. And when it launched on the exchange, it was at 4 cents. Now, last time I checked, it was at about 14 cents. And this could possibly go to like $5, right? So I'm trying to catch that next Stratus, the next Ethereum, trying to make my million on cryptos, right? And I hope you guys can go out there and also execute on everything I've talked about in this video. All right, so this has been probably one of the longest, if not the longest video I've ever done. But it's probably one of the best videos I've ever done because this is disruptive. This is disruptive. I'll keep on saying this, right? As I mentioned earlier in the video, this is the biggest transfer of wealth in human history, in world history, right? More people are becoming millionaires within 1 year with Stratus, within 2 or 3 years with Ethereum and others, right? I came back from Token Summit, the world's first cryptocurrency conference on ICOs and tokens, right? And I met a whole bunch of millionaires from Ethereum made safe ICOs, right? So, I mean, this is real. This is real. This is tangible. This is not some dream. I'm not just some dude talking about hackers and college programmers trying to change the world, right, in their basement. No, like, this is real. Like, this is real money. M's. We're talking about M's, man. Like, for real, right? Like, we're talking about M's, right? Stacks, right? that's play money, right? That's not real money. But anyway, right? But like, this is real, right? People are making millions out here. This is the fastest way I've discovered of making.
Well, once again, I'd like to thank this gentleman for his highly informative information. I have posted as a courtesy to him a link to his channel in the description below my video here, so you can check that out as well. Additionally, I cannot stress enough the fact that those of us who are involved in the Rainbow currency as affiliate marketers and who get it for ourselves, we don't consider it an investment. You should never consider acquiring Rainbow currency as an investment. Instead, it's your everyday money. Also, once again here, I'm asking you humbly and kindly to please like my video, click the like button below, subscribe to my channel, click the subscribe button. In addition, click the bell so you can be notified every time I come out with a brand new informative video. And boy, oh boy, thank you. See you once again on the other side.